Good morning and welcome to the TPN Credit Bureau YouTube channel. With me in studio today, Wendy Porter, the product specialist for the specific checks and criminal checks we're going to be running for public and private schools today, Wendy. Wendy, we're going to be focusing more on public school exemptions, specifically collections as well, on how to collect those very important school fees. We know that the biggest problem facing schools at this point in time is obviously the collection of school fees. Just a few things before we get going. Please remember, you need to be logged into YouTube to be able to access the chat. That means you need to obviously go and create yourself a profile. You need to log into YouTube either through your Google account, Facebook, whatever it might be, and then you can go and access the chat. So you can go and ask Wendy those questions throughout the session today. We are going to be running a 15-minute Q&A right at the end of the session, in which, Wendy, you're going to be posting the feedback form as well. It's very important not just for our own feedback, but also for you to indicate which new sessions you'd perhaps like, training perhaps on criminal checks. Wendy, me and you have been going across the country this last month, performing crim checks, both electronic and physical, to be able to access those different registers. So perhaps you'd like some training on those criminal checks and what the important legalities are. We did, however, do a training session about a few weeks back, just specifically regarding what is required when it comes to criminal checking and how to go about that off the TPN system. But if you need more information on that, you're more than welcome to speak to Wendy. Secondly, we didn't get dressed up for nothing today.
No.
So if we do seem a little bit blurry, go and click on the right-hand bottom of your screen. There's a little cog. Go and select 720p or higher, whatever your bandwidth allows, and you will definitely then see us better. And then remember, the Q&A we're going to be running throughout the session. Hopefully you're going to interrupt me. I don't just want to be doing systems training today. So ask me those important questions.
I certainly will.
Thank you, Wendy. And then during the 15-minute Q&A, any pertinent questions that do come up that's not specific to the subject matter that I'm discussing at that point in time will then be handled during the 15-minute Q&A. Wendy, I think the most important thing here, sort of the stopping point, is that to perform the check that I'm going to showcase on the TPN system today, what is important?
So one has to submit your employment data to TPN, not the school fee data, the employment data file, and that will then give you access to this inquiry that Peter's going to show you, which is called Smart Check.
And practically, Wendy, how do we get that information? How can they submit that employment information to TPN?
So on your payroll, you get an electronic UIF declaration data file. It's the same data file that your accountant or yourself, whoever it is who works on the payroll, you're sending it off to the Department of Labor or UIF department. That very same data file you send through to TPN. You can either email it through or you can send it through our Safe Send application, which is encrypted, and then we load that data into our verified employment database, and that will then give you access to the Smart Check inquiry for as and when you have the need to perform credit checks for exemption purposes, for application purposes, whichever purpose you're doing your credit check on.
I'm sure some of our clients are going, wow, wow, wow. We don't want to go and submit employment information through to the Bureau. What information do we actually capture, Wendy?
So it's purely, there are certain fields of information that we load on our database. It's obviously the person's name, surname, their position, their period of employment, their reason for leaving, and of course if they are full-time staff or if they are casual staff. And then what we do is we give a breakdown of their earnings per month in terms of a percentage form.
Yes.
So in other words, like myself, I earn 100% basic salary every month. A lot of you might have met Rachel, who's our sales lady. She earns basic and commission. So her basic and commission will every month be broken down into a percentage form. 60% basic, 40% commission, as an example.
Okay.
As a bureau, we are not allowed to display salary information. We're not even allowed to display salary brackets.
Okay.
We may only display, are you earning a basic salary, basic commission, basic, bonus at the end of the year, if you guys are lucky enough to get bonus. That's how it's broken down.
Okay. So we don't actually go and collect the salary specific information, so how much the person is earning.
No.
So it's just the information for employment verification purposes, for if the person is employed at a certain place and what has perhaps happened with that employment relationship. The person's
Correct.
resigned, it's terminated,
That's
whatever
right.
it might be. So for today's purposes, when we're going through the actual smart check inquiry, I'm going to showcase that.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you perhaps a couple more questions when it comes to the employment information, specifically for all our public schools on today, to go and have a look at exemptions.
Yes.
We're the only verified employment database in the country, so we actually have verified employment data. Wendy, sorry, just something else that I know is going to come up is when we did the webinar the other day on the Sexual Offences Act and you needing, or all schools needing to go and perform criminal checks on their specific staff, we say every 2 years or so to go and perform these checks. But it's very important even for those checks for clients to submit employment information.
Exactly
Why is
right.
that?
And the reason for that is, as a bureau, we may not issue a clearance certificate if we cannot verify you have 20 employees on your payroll and we've actually put through 20 of the same people through the Registrar of Sexual Offences and, of course, the Child Protection Register. So we have to verify that information. Hence why, again, the employment data file is needed for us then to issue that certificate as being 100% clearance.
Excellent. So just as a summation, they can contact data@tpn.co.za to request how they can actually go and submit that information into TPN. They can do it directly through their payroll, or they can go and submit their UIF files through to TPN.
That's exactly right.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you, Wendy. Wendy, I'm going to get started on the formal training session for today. Please feel free to interrupt me
Sure.
while I'm going through this. And I'm going to showcase specifically two things. I'm going to showcase how to do an exemption inquiry on TPN using the Smart Check functionality, one of the modules that's been built into the system to go and perform these checks. And then I'm going to showcase exactly how to send letters of demand for both private and public schools, as well as perhaps even blacklisting
Yes.
parents for non-payment. So we're going to go through the different functionality on the system. So to get started, remember, if you're not yet a TPN client, you can go and contact our help desk @tpn.co.za, or even just contact Rachel at the office using the office line, the 0861876000 number. Rachel will then assist you in getting signed up for TPN for schools so that you can go and process all of your applications, your exemptions, as well as performing your very important criminal checks for both private and public schools in the country. So we're going to provide you then with your login details. You're going to click login from the TPN site, tpn.co.za, right over there. You're going to input your username and your password and click login. Remember, TPN as a credit bureau doesn't just capture employment information or how parents pay school fees, another thing we're probably going to get in today, but it also captures rental and levy information as well. So it's a inherent database that captures all of these different forms of information from the different industries that I've just showcased. To go and perform your exemption inquiry check, your credit check, the one that you actually want to go and do. And once again, Wendy, this is only available to clients who go and submit that employment information into the bureau.
Yes.
You click credit checks right up at the top there, and then you go and select new credit check on a consumer. For those of you who are joining us today, who perhaps want to do other checks, you can obviously go and do so through the system as well. You can perform a new deed search, a know your client, and a pre-assessment check. The know your client check is for FICA verification purposes if you're an accountable institution, and then a pre-assessment for some of our rental and sales clients. They actually go and perform this before going viewing properties with a potential applicant. You can also perform business credit checks on your PTY limiteds, closed corporations and trusts. And say, for example, Wendy, you have a scenario where a parent owes you school fees, you don't know where they are, you can go and trace that specific person as well using the trace functionality on ID, passport, surname, date and birth, telephone number. There's also a place to go and have a look at your credit check histories and your mailbox. The mailbox is going to be utilized when we do crim checks.
Correct. And qualification inquiries also get displayed. So for those schools who are wanting to perform qualification checks for the purposes of employment, when the result is updated, you'll also find it in your TPN mailbox.
Excellent. Thank you, Wendy. So to perform a new consumer credit check on a potential parent or a person who's now come to the school saying, listen, yeah, I do need an exemption because I'm not currently employed. Go and click on Perform New Consumer Credit Check right there. The inquiry reason is going to be set out as rental or setting limit for goods or services. Very important. For perhaps employment checks, if you want to go and have a look at potential employees, potential teachers at the school, you can obviously also go and perform an employment or qualification verification right out on the bottom. But we're going to set this as rental and setting limit for goods or services. Your reference can be whatever you'd like. The person's RSA ID number is inputted over there and their passport number as well, if the person does not have a South African ID. You can obviously go and perform this on the passport number, but what's very important is to go and include then a date of birth, but it's going to prompt you to go and do so. The first name we're going to say is Freddie Smith, the current address where they're currently staying, the postal code, province, cell number, and landline number, all self-explanatory. Then you go and click Next. Unfortunately, I'm not running off a live system, I'm running off a demo system, so please ignore this credit score details. This is available for all our property clients to go and perform those checks and potential applicants. Consumer verification, vitally important. You want to go and perform a verification on the person's identity. Can't tell you how much identity fraud is out there at this point in time, but TPN, through the curator system, has built a verified biometric check on the person's identity. What will happen when this is requested is a request will be sent directly to this person's cell phone. They will go and access that link and they'll actually go and do a selfie verification to see if that person is actually the person that you are dealing with at the school. So I think go and perform that one. It is going to give you more information and as well as a liveliness biometric check. NCA compliance declaration, vitally important. For our schools listening today, you do need consent to run credit checks on any person. So whether it's for employment purposes, whether it is for your potential parents, for those exemption inquiries, please make sure you do have consent to do so. Then click Next, and the Step 3 report selection screen will open up for you. The important thing to note here, Wendy, is that the TPN Smart Check inquiry has already been ticked for this client. The reason for that is because they've submitted their employment information into the database, so we know that that is the specific check that is going to be available to them, the upper echelon inquiry that we can do at TPN on the specific profile. To request a criminal check is also very simple, but this is obviously only for your teachers or people working with children or disabled persons. You can go and click on the TPN SACE check or SACE inquiry right down at the bottom. What will happen then, if you did not have a look at the video that we did on this, is that we will send you through a CRC number. That is the number that we will come to the school for. We will actually come and perform the electronic as well as the physical fingerprinting directly at the school. Wendy, just remind me of the prices there, please, on the SACE inquiries. How much is that going to cost the school to go and perform this and for us to actually go and physically be at the place or the premises?
So all inclusive, it works out to be around about 300 Rand. That includes your on-site fingerprint capturing. It includes your SACE certificate if certain of your employees need a SACE certificate for registration purposes. It obviously includes the actual inquiries, your fingerprints, the registers, both sexual offences and child protection. So it includes everything. It will also include our own TPN Sexual Offences Act clearance certificate that we give to schools. But again, that's only based on loading employment information to TPN.
Excellent. And then our Commissioner of Oaths and the technician will actually go to the school and actually go and perform those.
Correct. It includes all of that.
Excellent. Thank you, Wendy. So once we're back on the screen, the Step 3 report selection, very important. Remember, you're going to perform that TPN Smart Check inquiry. And then you click Perform Credit Check. And magic, like Google, comes up almost automatically. We're going to give you a short introduction of what this actual criminal check, or rather the credit check, actually encompasses. We're going to give you the consumer's information, their specific details, whether they've got an RSA ID, full name, surname, gender, dependents, marital status, etc. The AKA information, or also known as information, and then we've got that ID verification for you done as well. You can see specifically on this ID verification, it was the biometrics check that we've done. You can see the selfie has matched as well. It's vitally important so that you know the person that you're dealing with is actually the person that you're dealing with. The Know Your Client verification, if this has been requested for FICA verification purposes, as an accountable institution will showcase on your front page. You can also go and download your KYC certificate, which is going to prove that the person is actually the person through their ID document, as well as their proof of address, which is important for FICA. We can see that it is a SLA compliant and the KYC result is an A. Now having a look at the TPN Rent Check scorecard, I just want to showcase a little bit of what the scorecard actually means. The basic credits ranges from A to F, A obviously being excellent and F being poor. We can see that through the TPN or credit payment history, the payments are average, and then having a look at TPN payments and credit payments directly off the system. Good standing is a very important term that we utilize. Good standing ratios means a person that pays the full amount that is due and owing to a particular party, the school, the rental company, the landlord, the body corporate. They pay that before the close of the month. So this doesn't mean that the person makes payments on time each and every single month. It just means that the payments are made before the end of that particular month. We can see that on the TPN payments, either school fees, levies, rental is 56% good standing, and credit payments is 94% good standing. We can also see that payment timeline, vitally important. A credit report summary of how many active accounts or inactive accounts this person has. A CPA account summary, which I'm not going to showcase right now. I'm going to go through that in the Transunion report. Contact addresses, contact numbers, and then query information. So who's actually performed this query on Freddie Smith?
So Peter, we've had a poll come up. It says, have you utilized TPN Credit Bureau to help you collect school fees? And out of our attendees, 75% have used us, 16% have not used us, and 8% said not yet, but will.
I like the not yet, but
yeah.
I think after today, they're actually going to see the power of the system and what the system can actually go and do
based
for you.
On this information, on this smart check inquiry that you're showcasing now.
Most certainly,
nice.
Most certainly. So just having a look at that as well, I mean, the 8% that is not currently busy utilizing the system, very important today. Get in contact with us, email helpdesk@tpn.co.za, or even just email Rachel direct. So rachel@tpn.co.za, and she'll get you set up with a contract, whether that's monthly or occasional, depending on where you fall into those categories. Incredibly simple to sign up with the system itself. Going back to the credit check result, the smart check result, once we've gone through the summary page, remember the summary page is going to showcase all of the information for you. It's going to give you a breakdown of everything that's actually encapsulated in the specific smart check inquiry. We can go and click on the TPN tab at the top. Before I actually do this, please, if you want to print this inquiry, you're more than welcome to, but don't click Control P on your system. Go and click print this report on the left-hand side. If I go into the TPN inquiry, it's all the information that's captured on the TPN database. So we've got that header information similar to the summary, your also known as information, a credit summary, and then all the TPN accounts. Let's go through these individually. So now we can actually see how this person pays the accounts that have been submitted to TPN. You can also obviously submit, and Wendy, we haven't touched on this yet, but we can go and submit, clients can go and submit how parents pay their school fees on a monthly basis, or if they're paying quarterly, if they're paying yearly, that information can also be reflected on TPN. If you need help with that, remember it is going to automatically improve your collections, because now you are affecting a person's credit rating as a result of how they make payments to you. So how they actually make payments on their school fees. Very important for today's purposes. We're talking about collections here. We're talking about exemptions, yes, doing things right from the start, but we're talking about how to get more money in for your school so that you can function as a school pay all your teachers, and make sure that your school is functioning in the proper manner. So if you need more information on that, please contact our data department, data@tpn.co.za, and they'll assist you with getting that data submitted.
And that's right, Peter. The minute you threat is the word I use, but the minute you threat somebody's credit profile, the payment behavior changes, because they know, I mean, you're a consumer, I'm a consumer, we're all consumers. But we know and understand at some point in time in the future, we're going to go out and apply for some form of credit of some sort. Be it a cell phone contract, or maybe we just want to go, car finance, or maybe we just want to go and increase our credit card limit. Whatever the case is, at some point in time, we are going to go and obtain credit or services somewhere. At that point, the credit and service provider does a credit check, and that then dictates how you are then going to pay that credit or service provider. And exactly the same happens with schools. When schools are loading their school fee data into TPN, and the minute the parent gets the SMS to say, oh, but this month you partially paid your school fees, straight away that payment behavior turns, because now they're aware that their credit profile is being negatively affected. And even on the positive
proactive collection method.
That's it.
Yes.
Even on the positive side, when the parent gets the SMS to say thank you for your school fees, it makes them feel good. They know that they're building up a positive credit report for themselves. So to upkeep that, they continue paying on time every single month. We've seen it on the database. We've seen how the payment behavior turns. Very important when it comes to exemptions as well. If you see on this TPN report that there is a lease in place, and for example, the parent then says to you, oh no, but sorry, I am unemployed. Well, how are you afford to paying your rent? Because I can see your rent is paid on time every month. So not just your school fee history, the rental history on TPN also certainly helps with exemptions, and of course for your applications for private schools as well.
Yes.
The way you pay the roof over your head is going to dictate how you pay your school fees.
Very, very, very right there.
Yeah.
Wendy, just remind me, the SMSs that we sent out, they're for free from the system. Once the data gets pushed into TPN, we actually go and send out those SMSs individually. What are those payment profile indicators that we have on TPN?
So the payment flags will either be paid on time, grace period, paid late, partial payment, or did not pay. And based on the payment flag that has been updated, we then, as a free service, SMS the parents, inform them of how their school fee payments has either positively or negatively impacted their credit profile.
So this is even before we send out letters of demand
Long
or
before.
blacklist. It's a proactive method
Correct.
of actually trying to get money in for the school.
You know, payment profile, Peter, for me personally, is even more powerful than a default listing.
Most certainly.
Because the payment flags stay on a person's profile for 5 years, whereas a default only remains for 12 months. But I know you'll get into that just now, but
No,
maybe I'm getting ahead of myself.
I love this. This conversation is fantastic. It gives out a lot more information than I can do on my own, so thank you.
Yeah, payment flags are very powerful in terms of your school fee collections. It makes all the difference.
Thank you, Wendy. So getting back into the Smart Check inquiry, like Wendy said, you're going to get all this information, not just on the school fee payments, but obviously on the rental payments and levy payments as well. What we can see from this first account is that the landlord, Piet Botha, has been paid on time and in full, paid on time, all of those, the rental amounts, and where the person is actually staying. There is also a school fee payment profile record. So one of our schools has actually submitted this information into the Bureau. We can see what the installment payments are, what the installment arrears is, as well as each and every single month how that person, Freddie Smith, has paid the school fees, which is going to give you a very good indication of how you might, as a new school, receive your school fees once this child is enrolled at the specific school. We can see paid late, so grace period payment categories, and then the last couple of months, Freddie Smith has actually caught up with all of his payments in 2021. Contact addresses, contact numbers, and inquiry information is also showcased through the Bureau system. Once we click on employment, and this is probably the most important tab when you are doing your exemptions, is to see whether the person is actually employed or not. I'm just going to go click on yes over here, because you obviously go and submit your data into the Bureau, your payroll information. We're going to give you that header information again, and then all previous employment information that has been loaded into TPN. So we can see that this person, Freddie Smith, worked for a real estate company. Their contract was terminated, their salary type and basic and commission, and the start date of that contract, as well as the termination date of that employment agreement. We can also see another employment at XYZ Properties. The person was dismissed. They earned both basic and salary and commission, and we can see the split over there. And then the current employment is at My Property Professionals. They're an office manager. The start date, there's obviously no end date, and how that salary split has occurred at My Property Professionals as well. So now you can already see whether the person is employed or not for all your exemption purposes. Incredibly important. But what if there is no employment information loaded into the Bureau system? As Wendy said, very important to go and have a look at all the tabs. The TPN tab is going to showcase that the person has a rental account, they're paying that rental account. How are they paying that rental account? Where are they actually getting the money? So it's going to give you information, it's going to give you ammunition to be able to ask the questions to that specific parent, so that you at the end of the day know whether you should grant that exemption or not. The next tab is the Transunion tab. And once again, this is going to showcase if there's no employment information, whether the person is employed or not. So clicking on that Transunion tab, it's going to give me my consumer information, my also known as information, my consumer addresses, telephone histories, and occupation of employees. This isn't necessarily verified information. It's the Transunion database where a person might have submitted an application and it's been updated through their system. The TPN system on that employment verification tab is the only verified information when it comes to the employment on the specific profile. Consumer counters, so inquiries done, judgments, notices, etc., is going to showcase on this counters tab. Yes, Wendy?
There is a question from Euphemia. She's asked, is it possible to have a setup for fees collections over 11 months and 9 months for one grade?
Will you answer your own question for us, Wendy?
So most of the school fee data comes from your billing systems. We fully integrate with D6 Plus and EduPack, and then for the nursery schools that are attending, we also integrate with Kids Cloud. So that's where your data comes from. Alternatively, when you are manually loading data, that you do direct on the TPN system. But where it pulls in from a billing system, we in the back end can set up certain rules and certain categories and certain, parameters that can dictate what the payment flag will be based on if your school fees are paid over 10 months, 9 months, 11 months, and also then for a particular grade. So it would have to be split by categories. So to answer your question, Euphemia, yes, it can be done via your billing system if we are able to integrate with that particular billing system.
And that information can all be obviously garnered from you or from data@tpn.co.za, but I think it's important here that we actually push the data into a staging database before all of that goes live.
So
we'll check if the information is correct prior to the actual load of the information into the Bureau.
We always test the data first before we load it to live.
Excellent. So ranging back to your Transunion tab on the TPN Smart Check inquiry, what we're also going to see right now is how much this person is indebted for through the CCA summary payment profile. So we can see the total active accounts, and these aren't accounts on TPN, but they might be credit accounts, they might be loans, they might be short-term lending, etc. They might even be store loans, is going to be showcased directly through the Transunion tab. We can see the current balance, so how much is due and due at the end of the day, what that credit limit is, the monthly installments on that debt, and the total arrears amount as well. what we can see is this Freddie Smith has a Markham's clothing account. That account has been paid up and it was closed in June of last year. It's Mr. Price homeware account that was also paid up fully. A personal loan of 25,000 Rand that was closed and paid up. A Cell C account as well as a Vodacom account. The Cell C account is 1 month and 2 months and 3 months in arrears, and then it was paid up and closed in June. And then a Vodacom account as well as another personal loan and a couple of other cellular accounts as well. Wendy, without getting into too much detail over here, what this is going to showcase is whether the person is able to pay their credit, but if they don't have employment records and then if they apply for an exemption inquiry, how are they paying these accounts? That question can then be asked. And hopefully through that process, you can garner whether the person is actually employed or not. Because let's face it, at the end of the day, there's a lot of people that might not be necessarily truthful when it comes to these applications.
Absolutely, and that's where exemption fraud comes in, and there's plenty of it.
And we're trying to obviously determine whether the person's employed, but also granting the right exemptions to the right parties is so vitally important, because there are obviously people sitting with issues at this point in time, specifically over the last 2 years, that might not necessarily be able to pay because they do comply with the exemption parameters. So this is going to assist you, but it's also going to assist the different parents in your school who should actually be getting the exemption that is garnered through the legislation that we've already been through in the previous sessions.
Correct, and the nice thing with the Smart Check inquiry based on your account information is when parents apply for a partial exemption, you can then ascertain and calculate affordability based on the monthly installments on each account. You can calculate that affordability.
Excellent. Thank you, Wendy. So ranging back into the Smart Check inquiry, there's just a couple of tabs that I do want to go through. And then, Wendy, we're going to head straight into your collections and how to do collections off the Bureau system as well. So if you've requested that ID verification or the biometrics check, you can go and click on the top tabs as well. Just that ID verification is there. You can go and view the person's image. The biometrics tab is going to showcase the actual biometrics done. If you click on the download report, it's actually going to pull up a photograph of the person's ID as well as the selfie check that you've done. So you can go and compare those, but the system does it for you anyway and matches that ID photograph to the biometrics. Very, very clever system through that curator profile that's been created. Then
we have another question again from Lucinia. Can you show us how to block people that made arrangements to pay after the due date for them not to get a notification?
So blocking people if they...
So that they don't get the free
fantastic.
SMS.
Okay, yes.
So if you go to My Data,
yes,
and you pull up James at the
Let's
bottom.
go to James Moi.
Scroll down
Perfect.
to the bottom, and then under the SMS green
Right over
dot,
there.
you literally click there and you untick all the payment flags, and you then say save, and that particular parent will then not get the SMS notification because, as you say, they've made an arrangement with you guys.
So glad I've got you here today. Thank you, Wendy. Going back into your My Data. Now, let's say, for example, the parent hasn't paid the school fees and you want to go and send that specific letter of demand for your private schools or your public schools. All you need to go and do for us, but what's vitally important before we do this, is that the information submitted into the Bureau. So through your data management system, through your Kids Cloud, through your D6, etc., that information can be pushed through automatically. Once that's been done through your My Data tab, it becomes incredibly powerful because now we can go into the different profiles. So for today's purposes, we're going to go into James Moi's account on TPN. Click right over there. We can see the status of the account, payments made, how many listings, perhaps blacklistings, has been gone through from the TPN system, as well as letters sent. To send a letter is very simple. Just click on letters right over there, and then you can see the previous letters sent through to James. I think one of the most important ones is the school welcome letter, because it welcomes the person into the TPN system, showcasing what the TPN system does, but also indicates to them what will happen should payments not occur. Click there to send a new letter, and then we've got all of these letters on TPN that do cost you a little bit of money to send through the system, but I think it's important to note over here that from a collections perspective, you are most probably, let's not even say most probably, you are definitely going to get a better reaction if a third party sends a letter of demand from a lawyer's perspective. The reason being is that it is not just the school sending out the letter of demand, but it also indicates that the TPN Credit Bureau system is going to affect that person's profile negatively as a result, similar to submission of the data.
On that note, there was a poll: are you using a debt collector and or attorneys to collect fees? 72% of our attendees said yes, 27% said no.
Okay, so interesting. So the proactive collections here is going to help a lot through the submission of data. If you're not currently using a debt collector, or even if you are using a debt collector, the system can be used in tandem to those. So you can go and send your own letters of demand directly through that tab. There's letters of demand for use by a private school, as well. That is the unregistered letter of demand and the registered demand letter. And then the registered demand letter for public schools. Very important. It's legislatively compliant. Remember, you need to provide those 90 days for that person to pay. When we're going through the blacklisting specifically, remember there are different parameters and different requirements for blacklisting. But remember, as a public school, you need to go and send out this specific letter. To send out the letter, just click send on the right-hand side over there. You can go and select the specific parent or the guardian. We're going to go select Joe. You can go and select next. With the CPA compliance check, remember for all the schools, if you've got a fixed term contract, that's usually within the first year of the actual child being in the school.
Correct.
It's very possible that thereafter that contract is going to roll over on a month-to-month basis. Usually it's going to be fixed term in that initial year where the party is actually, or where the child is actually at the school. You can go and select who the school actually is, whether it's a juristic entity or a natural entity, and then the parent is usually going to be a natural entity anyway, and click on validate. It's just a simple Consumer Protection Act compliance check. If the contract is on a month-to-month basis, obviously this is not going to be applicable. It's purely for fixed-term contracting in that initial year. But it really does depend on how often you go and sign addendums to your contracts and go and update your agreements. Go and fill out the default date. So when Freddie Smith or Joe Blogs did not make payment initially, the specific amount due, so the total amount due for school fees at that point in time, the contact person at the school, don't go and include Wendy's name over here, please, or her cell phone number or contact number. She's not going to know what the parent actually owes the school. You can go and fill out a specific contact person at the school. The associated payments you can go and have a look at. Go and select the delivery options. So you can go and obviously send this directly through registered post. We go and handle all of this for you. You click the buttons and we go and sort everything out for you. You can also email the letter to CC yourself. Click on delivery confirmation and click send letter. Really as easy as that. That letter of demand has now been sent out, legislatively compliant for public schools as well as for your private schools. Blacklistings is the last thing that I'm going to go through on the system. Now, Wendy, it's a very important thing here to note that blacklistings is regulated by the National Credit Act. So you need to actually follow the piece of legislation when it comes to your blacklisting. What's important over here is that a correct letter of demand has been sent out, specifically a 20 business day letter of demand, or rather you need to wait a full 20 business day time period before you can actually go and blacklist. But also that parent must be 3 consecutive billing cycles in arrears, meaning that they should not have made payment to you, or they should have made partial payments to you for a period of 3 months or 3 billing periods in a row, depending on how your accounts have been set up through the system. So to go and do so, just click on blacklistings right over there, or rather let me go into the My Data tab. This is an easier way to showcase this. You can just go and click listings right over there on James Moa's profile. It is going to open up that record for you. You can just click there to add a new blacklisting record. If there's multiple parties, multiple parents, multiple guardians, that is actually on the contract that applied for the school, you can obviously go and blacklist both if those parameters have been reached. Fill out the default date. That is the latest default date of the actual payment, so the last month that the payment was not made. The rating, please go and select TPN and TransUnion. The reason being is that then more people are going to see this actual blacklisting on the account. If it's only listed on TPN, only TPN clients who perform the inquiry is actually going to see it. So for these purposes, please go and select TPN and TransUnion. Final notice is probably the easiest one to go and sort of realize through the system. It makes sense. It is the final notice. Click on list on TransUnion. The full amount due at that point in time can be included, and then the specific reason for the blacklisting. Make it very simple. Just showcase that the parent has not paid school fees. Really as easy as that. And then the associated payments. So just a quick stopping point over here. I would not be able to blacklist at this point in time. The reason being is that January is a paid late. If January showcased it did not pay or a partial payment, I would be able to blacklist, but you need to have your 3 consecutive billing cycles or billing periods or months, depending on that contract, in arrears before I can go and do so. Click on NCA Compliance Declaration, click on Save Listing, and then you have blacklisted that parent through the TPN Credit Bureau system. Wendy, that brings me to a close of our formal training session today. I'm sure we've got a lot of questions. I'm sure you're just going to make up questions for me anyway to go and answer today. But would you mind please just posting the feedback form as well in your chat? You can go and access that right now. Go and ask your questions. Let's have a nice discussion regarding collections as well as exemptions, perhaps some problems that you are currently experiencing. And then once we're done with that, we're going to close off the session. But please go and remember, go and fill out those feedback forms for us right now.
Peter, I do have a question from Euphemia. Is it possible to withdraw a blacklisting immediately after the full payment is made, or will it go away after 24 months?
Okay, so 2 questions over there.
Yes.
You can go and remove the blacklistings purely by contacting us, or going to go and do so and deleting that actual blacklisting off the system, specifically when payment has been made. In terms of the National Credit Act, that actual payment, or rather the blacklisting, needs to be updated as soon as the payment has been made. But also through the payment profile, if that data has been submitted into the Bureau system, we're obviously also going to see through the payment profile records that payment has been made as well. But it's very important. You can contact us. We can get that sorted out for you. The blacklisting secondary question will only stay on for a period of 12 months. So that's 1 year, not the 2-year period. It used to be 2 years prior to, I think, 2019. That has now changed to only a period of 12 months.
Thank you, Peter. Second question from Tseho. What about parents who have been owing for over 3 years? Can I still blacklist them?
You will most certainly be able to do so. It depends on the prescription time periods and when that prescription has actually been run. I'm sure you're actually asking prescription period here because they're asking about the 3-year time period.
Correct.
But it depends if it's a rolling account. It depends when the last invoice has been sent. It depends if prescription has actually been interrupted as a result of the child still being in the school. So what I would suggest, Tseho, is just sending an email to legal@tpn.co.za, just with that inquiry, with the specific payment records. We can have a look whether the prescription has run already, but it should very possibly, you would be able to run or actually load that blacklisting on that profile as a result of that party being in arrears. Prescription time periods can be interrupted in certain instances. So let's have a look at that for you from a legal perspective. Just pop us a mail and we'd be glad to assist.
Thank you. And Klantla wants to know, is sending a final notice same as blacklisting, or do you need to send a final demand letter and then a final notice and then blacklist?
I like the question. Okay. So very simple in terms of the National Credit Act, you only need to send one letter. That one letter needs to showcase that if the person does not pay you within a certain time period, they will be blacklisted. It depends on the school contracts whether you're going to send a letter of demand, whether you're going to send a final notice, but at the end of the day, you actually only need to send a singular letter that lets that person know, listen here, they have not paid you, they need to pay you within a certain time period, and if that payment has not been made, then the blacklisting can actually occur. There's a number of different letters. I don't really like to utilize things like a final notice letter or a final letter of demand. You really only need to send one, and that's the TPN letter of demand directly off the system. When I click through on the blacklisting page, you might have seen that I clicked final notice. That is purely what is going to be loaded on the blacklisting, that a final notice has been given. That is the reason for the actual blacklisting. But that doesn't mean that you still need to go send a final notice or a final letter of demand. Just send the one, make sure you're selecting the correct one to go and send, and then that letter is going to keep you legislatively compliant so that you can actually go and blacklist after that period.
Thank you, Peter. We don't have any more questions as of now.
That's perfect, Wendy. I think we've done a very good 45-minute session on
I think so too.
exemptions. Thank you very much for joining me today. You were fantastic.
Peter, thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. Please remember, go and complete those feedback forms right now. If you haven't yet subscribed to the TPN YouTube channel, go and select the subscribe button, as well as that little notifications bell. That's going to let you know when new upcoming trainings do come up. Whether you're in the property industry, whether you're a school, in the education sector, it's just going to let you know that those new trainings are going to be live on a certain date. Thank you very much for joining us. Hope you have a fantastic day further, and see you all soon.